Welcome to March 2022. I cannot believe we're doing this again. How fun. It is our monthly webinar, and we are super excited tonight because we have Tyler Dawn Rosenquist with us. She's, for those of you listening, she's waving. Hello, hello. This is going to be such a great night. I'm just going to read really quick her bio. Most of you know her, love her, have most of her books. If you're homeschoolers, you're all going, woo, we love you. But Tyler is the host of The Character and Context and the Context for Kids, where she explores Bible context and the development of the character of our Savior with adults and kids. She has been married to Mark for 31 years, and together they have two 21-year-old twin sons, whom they were phenomenally blessed to adopt at birth. They make their home in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which is a stone's throw away from Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks, where they spent their summers hiking. Tyler is very passionate about adoption, special needs parenting, and supporting people in their quest to become image bearers in their otherwise messy lives. Tyler, thank you for joining the Rudu Cafe tonight. Love it. And I love that our messy lives, we're just a bunch of misfits here. That's it, right? All coming together, trying to do this somehow, some way. Love it. So welcome. I am just going to kind of turn it over to you so you have the most time, because no one wants to hear me. They all want to hear everything you have to say. So welcome, say hello, and just jump right in.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Tyler Dawn Rosenquist, as she said, and I'm wearing my favorite outfit today. See, I've got I don't know if you've seen Up. It's got Doug, and it says, "I just met you and I love you." And so does my hat. So now I'm going to take my hat off, since you've all seen my hat. And that's really, I'm going to be talking today about how not to become a Torah terrorist or continue being a Torah terrorist. And, I speak from experience, and, I think a lot of us have been there. We get excited about new information and we just become insufferable and we don't know all that much. And unfortunately, by the time we do start to know stuff, we've got a lot of embarrassing behavior in the rearview mirror that's just, wish we could hit the delete button, right? Anyway, so I prepared a little bit of stuff here, and just going to kind of go through what I wrote out today. A lot of I wrote The Bridge, which was my first book, to get people through those first two Torah terrorist years, hopefully get them to not even do them, to kind of get people over the thing where we're enemies with the church. We don't want to be enemies with the church. That's ridiculous. We are the church. Anyway, one of the problems that I see, and this is actually a problem with mainstream Christianity and Hebrew roots and Messianic Judaism, is that people largely, they don't read the Bible correctly. They've never been taught to read the Bible correctly. And this is obviously a problem that your little note there. Okay, I'm not going to read those. I'm going to be good. Anyway, we're not really taught to read the Bible correctly. We look at what's happening in biblical accounts, and we see things as ideals instead of descriptions of what was happening. I often say the Bible doesn't usually tell us what should have happened. It tells us what did happen, and sometimes without commentary. But the Bible, I was reading Sandra Richter, her amazing book, The Epic of Eden, which everyone should read. And she was making the point that a lot of scholars make, she just made it a lot better than they do, that the Bible isn't endorsing or canonizing Hebrew or Jewish culture, or any other culture. The Bible's actually critiquing all human culture, because it's, we're all messed up. None of us are where we need to be. And it's showing how God is leading us out of our own worldly kingdoms and into his kingdom. Biblical heroes. I mean, biblical heroes are often monsters. All right. They do terrible things. We were never meant to make excuses for them or to feel like we had to. When we see bad behavior in the Bible, the Bible is a wisdom text. And it's inviting, because it's a wisdom text and not a history book per se, it's inviting and demanding that we engage with it, okay, viscerally, emotionally, with the story, using all of our senses and our experience and everything. We're not supposed to read it and be calm or unmoved. And sometimes, we'll be thrilled, and at other times we're just going to be utterly disgusted, and that's okay. We'll have questions about things that outrage us, and there are no answers given in the text to these questions. And according to Yeshua, you may call him Jesus, Moses even gave laws that were basically an allowance for evil. Slavery, patriarchy, and alternatives to wartime rape and a whole lot of other things. Moses made allowances that often didn't treat women like they were full human beings, but compared to the rest of the ancient Near Eastern world, it was like amazing, but it was a starting place. And it's okay to react and to even grapple with that, just the same way that Jacob grappled with the angel of the Lord. If we aren't struggling with the text, then we aren't really reading it. And, as it was written to the ancient Near Eastern audience who would have struggled with it too. Now, when people coming to Torah, especially, aren't taught that Torah is wisdom literature designed to promote critical, righteous thinking and to serve really, as a training manual for Israel's judges so they can make righteous judgments in their community, because it's not like they all had Bibles. They didn't have Bibles. When we don't understand that, it gets misused and misunderstood as a very black and white list of do's and don'ts with no discernment whatsoever for, when do you make exceptions? All right. When does one law have to fold so that you can obey another one that's more important? The weightier matters. And sometimes one invalidates another. Obviously, we see things like chattel slavery that Moses allowed goes specifically against certain commandments to love neighbor and to be good to the foreigners. Since the cross, we keep pushing that envelope of love. All right. So, and, we can look back with a lot of gratitude that the world has come, so far from the brutality of the ancient Near East, where Abraham and Moses and David, lived. And, a lot of those laws that we look back on and we go, well, how could it allow that? Well, those were very progressive. They were very liberal. This was not, the Bible wasn't a conservative document in a lot of ways. It gave freedoms to people who were marginalized otherwise, and it prevented a lot of oppression. They protected children and women and foreigners and the vulnerable, because in that ancient Near Eastern world, men had the absolute authority to kill family members for any reason whatsoever. All right. It's and so, a lot of situations back then, they would horrify us. We would never want to live in them now. The cross has really changed how we view everything. Which, leads me to one of the big misunderstandings when people first come to Torah. And sometimes people never get over this, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, is they don't understand that it's all about allegiance. It's allegiance to Yeshua, to Jesus. All right. Salvation is about allegiance. to Yahweh through the Son, no matter what name they call him by, no matter what their understanding is, and everybody who has that salvation is our brother and our sister, no matter what denomination, whether they're Catholic, Protestant, Charismatic, Pentecostal, Hebrew roots, Messianic, whatever. Because it's not focused around the Torah, it's focused around Yeshua and Yahweh. Okay. Now, I'm not saying the commandments are unimportant. They're covenant stipulations. Okay. It is important that we do things a certain way, but that's not salvation. Salvation is saying that, you know what? I believe that when Yeshua of Nazareth came and he did all these miracles and he acted in this way, that he was representing God. I look at him and I can see the character of God. I believe that he was unjustly whatever, and he was vindicated by being raised from the dead. And that's who God is. And he's my king. And that's allegiance. And that's what covenant is all about. It's about allegiance. Okay. Not about always doing everything right. Thank goodness, because I sure don't. I see a lot of these memes in the Torah community on social media where, when you're looking at what would Jesus do, don't forget that flipping tables isn't entirely out of the question. But if you are not willing to die on a cross for somebody, then don't be too keen to overturn their tables or engage in polemic with them, which is name calling. Okay. Polemic, which is Greek insults, meant something different in that culture than it means today. And so when we do it, it's not the same thing. And also, if Yeshua does it, he knows people's hearts. Guess what? We do not. We don't know where another person is in their mind. And if we're jerks and they think we're a jerk already, we're just going to prove it to them. And overturning tables also, it was a prophetic act that only applied to the Messiah. And when we do it, it's just bad behavior. So probably the first thing that people do when they come into a knowledge that, there are more commandments to be kept and there's no reason to toss them out, is that they forget about their salvation, which is why I talked about it. They forget about, they get some knowledge, okay? But they don't know whether or not it's true or not. They don't have the knowledge base, they don't have the experience, they don't have the discernment to understand what that they're being told is legitimate and what is totally bogus. And there's a lot of bogus stuff out there. Sometimes and I did this, I almost denied Yeshua, almost denied him when an anti-missionary came at me in 2014 in December. All right. We forget what experientially we know and what we knew when we were mainstream Christians. Okay. That we forget that after we came to salvation, our lives started changing in ways that we were not. I stopped swearing. Okay. Evidently, I stopped swearing immediately after getting saved. And I was like using the F word all the dang time. Okay. And 2 weeks later, somebody says to me, "Why aren't you swearing anymore?" And I said, "What?" I had no idea. It wasn't something I tried to do. It was a sign and a wonder. It was a witness to people that there'd been an actual change in my life. And, thank goodness that wasn't the last one either. So we have to remember that when we came into faith through Jesus, we had those real experiences and that real faith so that later when people are saying, well, if you're not keeping Torah, you're not really saved. If if you're not saying the names right, you're not really saved. And there are a lot of teachers saying that. But if we remember experientially what we knew, because it's a relationship and a relationship is about experiences. No, we're not led by our emotion, but experiences are evidence. So we don't forget them. When we do forget them, we tend to become monsters. All right. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, although a lot of people will scream and shout that, I'm not keeping Torah for salvation, the way they act and they talk, no one's believing them because, that's how they're acting. Okay, so I've got two mantras that I want to cover that cause people a lot of problems. So no one keeps Torah and no one is lawless. Some people just keep a few more commandments than other people. Christians aren't lawless. They keep more than half of what can currently be observed. Only 42% of the Torah can be observed right now. They keep 58% of those. Even the most ardent Torah keepers, I just said it, I should have said, keep only 8% more. And there are some that no one would keep under any conditions whatsoever. If you beat your slave to death, I don't care if he dies 3 days later, you're going down, you're not innocent. But Moses made these allowances for evil. He did, for the evil of the culture. And the Christians who are only keeping those 58% are more likely to be keeping the weightier matters of the law than people who claim to be Torah observant. All right. These are just mantras. These are things we say. Oh, they're lawless. Oh, we're Torah observant. But they're not true. They're just mantras. But when you say a mantra enough, you begin to think they are true. But we've just got to get out of that. You ever met a lawless person? Who isn't listening to any of the law? No, that would be horrifying. Probably even sociopaths keep a lot of it. All right. I found that once people are aware that these are just mantras, Torah observant and lawless, the gulf between people really decreases. And I found I can talk to any Christian and I say, I keep the feast. And they say, well, we've been freed from that. And I said, well, it's not sinful, is it? What? Well, it's not sinful to keep extra commandments, is it? No. Okay. Then usually the conversation's over. It's, I think it's only a big deal when we make it a big deal, when we make it a wedge. Okay. Now I know a lot of people who think that they are just picked on and persecuted, but then I see them around people, I go, oh, babykins, it's all you. You're not meaning to cause a fight, but you're causing a fight. Okay. Okay. So the Hebrew scriptures actually have multiple words for sin, which, since you listen to Holyssa, I'm sure you know, the lowest is chatat, which means kind of like an oopsie. You had no idea you were sinning. It wasn't on purpose. You aren't in rebellion. And the worst is pesha, which is high-handed rebellion, spit in God's face while you're purposefully doing something he really hates, like oppressing people. And I'll probably talk about this more later, but God really does differentiate through the Torah, prophets, and writings. All sins are not created equal. So when we use a word like lawless, it shouldn't apply to like not keeping the right parties. It's like oppressing people. All right. We shouldn't get prideful about the easy stuff like resting on the Sabbath and throwing the right parties and eating cleaner. That's why those aren't included in Matthew 25 in the parable of the sheep and the goats. caring for the vulnerable is the criteria that Yeshua says will differentiate the sheep from the goats. There's really nothing burdensome about resting on the Sabbath and throwing parties, a few times a year. It's like, oh, it's so horrible. And I hate eating beef instead of pork. Oh, it's so, no, it's really not. All right. One of the things we lose track of when we come to Torah is keeping in mind what an image bearer is and is not. Okay. An image bearer is quite literally a representative of God's character on earth. All right. The language used actually makes us out to be the equivalent of ancient Near Eastern idols. It's the word selem, which they were supposed to be indwelt by the spirit of the deity that it represented. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that's New Testament language there. We are filled with the Holy Spirit. We are idols. We're literally idols. But people just aren't supposed to worship us. Don't do that. The people saw the idol and they were supposed to remember the god or goddess. It's the things we do in public that show people's God's character, like right rulings, justice, righteousness, generosity. And speaking of fruit, we have to be careful about zeal, because zeal is something you find in baby Hebrew roots people in droves. But uninformed zeal is as unholy as, and I'm using holy and unholy incorrectly, but you guys know what I mean. And those two things, holy and unholy zeal, or good and bad zeal, are juxtaposed in Galatians 5. And when we make this terrible mistake, and I think everyone does it at first, of neglecting the Gospels and the epistles and focusing only on the Torah portions. One, you can't know the Bible very well just focusing on the Torah portions, doing a Torah portion a week. That's like this much of the Bible. There's so much more, and we need the rest. And we can become dreadfully unbalanced and even violent in our speech, our actions, and in our faces. People can just, where's the joy, and people can't see the love we are to have for one another because it's been replaced by anger, and anger can grow into the wrong kind of zeal. It's one thing to be angry about slavery, and another thing to be angry that people, aren't getting it. Whatever we think getting it is. Let's look at Galatians 5 right now. We're going to talk about the works of the flesh first. And a lot of these you see in people who are Torah observant. All right. Now, the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, moral impurity, promiscuity, not those. Idolatry, sorcery, hatred, strife, that's fighting, jealousy, outbursts of anger. You ever seen that on social media? Selfish ambitions. I see that with teachers, where they won't promote each other, and they won't prop each other up. Dissensions, nitpicking, factions. This is us over here, and it's like, that's factions. That's like the heart of the Hebrews movement in a lot of ways. Envy. Okay, then drunkenness and carousing and anything similar. And then, it's Paul said, those who practice these things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And it doesn't matter if you're resting on the Sabbath and it's not a matter of you're not going to heaven. That's not what it's saying. It's like you're not inheriting the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is here and not yet. And if you're engaging all these things, then you are not experiencing the kingdom of heaven right now. And neither is anyone who has to be around you. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things. And that's being an image bearer. Those are Yahweh's character traits. And they were considered in the ancient world to be very womanish, very womanish. And so Yeshua was very offensive in the ancient world because he was not playing the honor and shame games. He was not being manly the way that they would have you be manly, which is really aggressive and, doing whatever you can to get more honor. That he wasn't doing it. And he was telling people to forgive and love and pray for enemies, and not really very popular things in the first century or in any honor shame culture. In the Torah, there is this great law, I think it's in Numbers 19, about the fruit trees. And for the first 3 years, you're supposed to pick off all the fruits so that the tree can grow and mature. And then no one can even eat from that tree until the 5th year. And, there's a lot of wisdom in that. It would, it'd be nice if there was this requirement when you come into any radically new understanding, you keep your mouth shut for 3 years. And you don't minister for at least 5, because, people who made major shifts, and that's me and everybody, we lack the understanding to rightly divide the new information. And, being a Berean can't be accomplished by listening to YouTube videos and just taking people's words for things. If the Bereans had taken Paul's word for everything, they wouldn't have bothered studying, and they'd still be called Bereans because it was a place name, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, a lot of problems because people learn stuff and they're immediately out on social media or in their churches, and they're trying to preach stuff that they don't really know yet, and they can't defend. Okay. And if you can't defend it, don't talk about it, because you're going to do damage to it. And you'll probably get angry and defensive when you can't defend it. And that's why we wait. Another problem with, I see with Totalitarism is anger at the church. And this was me. Okay. I had some horrifying experiences in my last church, and I got involved with the out of church movement. And I think a lot of the people who actually come to Torah are part of the out of church movement, because, you still love God, you're wanting something, and, there are all these people online who are out of church, and this is the way to go. And they got something going on. They're the remnant, wherever we are is the remnant, right? Anybody else is not part of it. But anger at the church, not only is it misplaced because we are the church is an entity. You can be angry at a church and at certain leadership, but when we just say all the Catholics are evil, all the, mainstream Christians are evil, we're not being honest. Okay. And we say that because our discernment and judgment have been compromised by hurt and anger, and sometimes betrayal, that kind of stuff. But nobody's wrong about everything except the Satanists. I think they're probably wrong about. Not that I've studied. You know what? I take that back. I've never studied Satanism. They could be right about a few things. I just don't know what they are. But Catholics, Protestants, they are right about most things. And we probably agree on 95% of stuff with all the other denominations. We do. It's just this tiny little bit. I mean, we believe the craziest story ever told, that the Son of God came down and he worked all these miracles and they killed him and he rose from the dead. If you actually believe that, we got more in common than we will ever have not in common, because that's just crazy. If we can, if we've got that in common, everything else is just small potatoes. But, as far as the things that I'm wrong about, you're wrong about, and they're wrong about, we're blinded. We have all these blindnesses. And And we're blind to what we're blind to. And God is the one that opens eyes and opens ears in season. All right. Folks get ridiculously frustrated because, they preach and people don't believe them. But that doesn't work that way. One, we have to have credibility with the people we're talking to, or it'd be stupid if they just took our word for everything. I don't expect people to take my word for everything. And they have to be receptive, when we do it. And we can't behave like unloving jerks. You can't beat someone over the head with a club while saying John 3:16 and saying that, the word of God does not come back void. Yeah, speaking the truth in love. Another verse I hear really get abused is Proverbs 28:9. Anyone who turns his ear away from hearing the law, even his prayer is detestable. And this one gets abused a lot. Hardly anyone would actually turn their ear from hearing Torah. The only question is, how much has a person been conditioned to believe is still in play or not in play? But this isn't about rebellion. This is about blindness, and goodness knows we're all blind. People can get funny about Hebrew in the Hebrew roots movement, but it's not a unique language. It's very similar to many other languages of that region in antiquity. And Paleo Hebrew isn't a secret language. It's a font. It's like Times New Roman. We didn't even find it until 1870, and they didn't know what it was. They thought it was Phoenician because it's so similar to all the languages of the region. And the whole thing about returning to a pure tongue being Hebrew, that's rabbinic. And that was long, long after both parts of the Bible were written, that the rabbis made that decision that everyone would be speaking Hebrew in the end. But there's nothing in scripture to support that. Let's see, calendars and names. Oh man, I think there are like 6 biblical calendars out there. All right. And I know a guy who's actually preached all of them and has condemned as damned and stupid all those on the other calendars, whatever calendar he's not on right now, even though he's been on all of them. He's rabbinic and sliver and dark moon conjunction and lunar Sabbath and jubilees. And now he has a website where he preaches the Enoch calendar. And no matter how many times he changes his mind, it doesn't humble him, because he just, it's not giving him perspective. It's like, you could be wrong this time too. And sometimes we're so enamored with new information that we just decide that whatever's new is correct. That's a big problem with Torah people. And you see it also why people in the Torah movement are so much more likely to get involved in conspiracy theories, because it's that same mindset. Everyone in the church is lying. They're all deceived. And then you start thinking, well, if the church is deceived, then the whole society is deceived about everything. And it becomes so fear-based. People get panicky, and all of a sudden they can't trust everyone, and they're trying to get ahead of it. Okay. And it starts with thinking that everybody in the church is wrong, and it just kind of goes from there. There are other people who are so afraid of not using the right name. And they say that if you don't use the right name, God won't hear your prayers. And they don't even know that isn't biblical. That's ancient Near Eastern, Greco-Roman, ancient world magic rituals. They believed sacred naming did not start with the Bible. Sacred naming started with pagan cultures, where if you didn't say the name just right, you weren't going to get heard. But if you did say the name just right, they had to hear you, and you had sway over them, and they had to do what you say. That's how magic works. You find out the deity's true pronunciation of their name. You ever look at Egyptian myths? If you look at the myth of Isis and Ra, she finds out Ra's real name, and she can make him do whatever whatever she wants him to do. And he couldn't do anything about it because it was magic. A lot of what is taught, especially on the internet, in the Hebrew roots and Messianic Jewish movement, they're not true, but they're passionately held to, as those scriptures. And I'm talking about the everything is pagan. The Christmas and Easter are Babylonian. Hislop, Lou White's fossilized customs. I'm going to stop right there because people might get angry because I'm going to step on. But the people who have all taught about all the Babylonian origins of everything, there is absolutely, not only is there no archaeological proof to all of it, to any of it, but we actually know so much, and the research just isn't being done. And I've done it, and it's why a lot of these teachings are being pulled off now. 119 removed Sunburned after John and I had a long discussion in private messages, and they finally pulled it. I don't think they've ever talked about why they pulled it, but it was based on Hislop. Okay. And there are other teachings too. And I see this stuff destroying marriages. People are dividing over it. I've had girlfriends who have told their husbands that they're pagans because they got a Christmas tree up. All right. Yeah, Gail, you're right. Yeah, they can be, because people took it and they took it off of there and they put it up on their own channels. It's true. That's the problem with any bad teaching. And even my first book, I made reference to Christmas and Easter being pagan. And I said, it's easy to look up. And as soon as I found out not, I pulled my book and I rewrote it. And it's awful. I mean, once something's out there, it's out there. You can never get it back. That's why we have to be careful. But I've seen marriages splitting up because, one spouse becomes Torah observant and the other isn't. And they come to me and they say, well, I think God wants me to divorce him because he's eating pork and he's celebrating Christmas and Easter. I said, whoa. I said, wait, when you said you would love, honor, and cherish him, did you mean you'd only love, honor, and cherish him if he changes when you change? You promised to love, honor, and cherish him, and he was eating pork, and he was putting up the Christmas tree, and he was, Easter bunny, which has nothing to do with Ishtar. Check my blog. Say, no, you need a covenant before God with this person, and you're calling him a pagan. Don't do it. It's the people get really whipped up into a frenzy. But fortunately, a lot of ministries have pulled those teachings quietly. They're not announcing why, and I wish they would announce why. I wish they would admit what they were wrong about, because it just allows the lies to continue. It's embarrassing, believe me, I know. Pagan versus cultural. This is a huge thing with the Hebrew roots movement. There's a huge difference between something being idolatrous, which is actually bowing down to and serving another God on purpose and giving that God credit for the works of Yahweh, and allowing, that God to take the place of preeminence in your life. And on the other hand, something that's simply cultural. All right. Perfumed oil was placed on the feet and head of idols. So it was also done to Yeshua. Does that endorse paganism? No, cultural thing. Egyptian tree of life was the acacia. So does that mean that the paneling in the Holy of Holies and the Ark of the Covenant, which were both made of acacia, are pagan because the Egyptians worshipped it as their tree? Well, they didn't worship it. They considered it to be the tree of life, and Thoth would, be writing on the fruit of it. And yeah. For that matter, the Egyptians also had a portable shrine that looked really like the Ark. Pagan? No, culturally recognized symbols. the ancient world, they also served their gods with sacrifices, unleavened bread. They actually presented unleavened bread to Ishtar. When it says making cakes for the Queen of Heaven, I found a scholarly article as unleavened bread. And him singing, not hot cross buns. Okay. Why were they also done for Yahweh? Because they're cultural ways of honoring the divine. It's, what you do with them that is whether they're idolatrous or not. I want to talk real quick about fake names, and especially on social media. I don't know if people do it off of social media, but a lot of people, when they come to Torah, they don't feel comfortable being of Gentile birth anymore. Okay. All of a sudden they feel like they're second-class citizens. And if they're not Jewish, if they don't take on Jewish names in another language, that somehow they're not special, they're not important. But there are no second-class citizens in the kingdom of heaven. My second book, I wrote about this to combat this problem, not fake names, but talking about how to the Jew first and to the Gentile later. That's how the gospel went. Okay, that's not a hierarchy. But there are a lot of people online, and they're taking on these fake Jewish names, and they get in fights. And if somebody doesn't know enough, and they see a Hebrew name, and they see somebody behaving badly, isn't anti-Semitism bad enough? Talk to Hanok Young about this. It's very dangerous, this game that people are playing. There's nothing to be gained in denying who we were when we came to faith and putting on, what amounts to airs. And it's a real point of contention with other Christians, all right, who see it as ridiculous and cultish. Also, if you have a fake name on social media, there is no accountability. Okay, and we need to be accountable. People need to know who we are if we're preaching the gospel. Let's see, and if Apollos and Junia didn't change their names, when they were named after a false god and goddess respectively, then, why do we feel like we have to do it? We can have no greater identity than we have in Yeshua. That's took me a lot of years to learn that, and that I wasn't a second-class citizen. Oh, goodness sakes. I'm almost at 45 minutes here. People don't understand clean and unclean, and so they think of it as sin. They use it as an insult. But we all have corpse impurities. We all have the grand kahuna of ritual uncleanness. Nothing else makes it worse. We're just all terrible. Without the ashes of that red heifer, all it meant was that you couldn't go, depending on what kind of uncleanness you have, you can only get so close to the temple. That's it. It's like, and unclean animals are only unclean as corpses and for food. We can ride them. We can, have them as pets. We can have pigs on the farm to deal with trash and all that. Everything is clean for something or another. Okay. It's just clean just means that something is its proper place or proper state or being used for the right things. That's all. Yeah, there we go. Tov, yeah. I was dealing with this guy all week. Jeez, last 2 weeks. He's toys are not graven images. That are not graven images. They just aren't. I know people who have burned all their children's toys in front of them to try and protest idolatry, but no one is worshiping a toy. No one's performing the dagger ceremony where they put the dagger in the doll's mouth and filling it with the essence of a god, which is what you would have to do to a graven image to actually make it anything other than just whatever. Let's see. Genealogies and pointless arguments. I'll tell you something. DNA testing has made a lot of people in the Hebrew roots movement very insufferable. I know people who are 2% Jewish who are like obsessed with it, and they lord it over, oh, I have Jewish blood. I don't. My parents got their DNA test. I don't have a drop. So, and I'm actually glad, because now I'm just not tempted to do the nonsense stuff. My kids are Jewish. I'm not. They're adopted. You know, and I'll talk about bad scholarship really quick. If you can't ask questions, if you can't ask someone questions, don't listen to them. Okay. If they don't give you their sources, don't listen to them. Or you can listen to them, but just, you can't say that what they're doing, what they're saying is absolutely true. If someone isn't interested in being a teacher, be really, really careful. All right. Because there's a lot of people who make claims, a lot of people who say crazy stuff, and goodness knows I have taken their crazy stuff and I have said it too. All right. And I couldn't be sorrier for that. All right. So the truth is, in the Hebrew roots movement, and this is the problem, and I'm just going to wrap up now. We need to be looking out for people more than we do. These people coming in. Okay, that's why I wrote the bridge. It's a book that seems to be directed to Christians, but it's really not. It's directed to Hebrew roots people. And as I talk to Christians, they see that, oh, you know what? They aren't horrible and everything, and all this stuff is okay. You know, in congregations, it's a lot easier, you know, but we mustn't dare to be so afraid of confrontation that we're unwilling to have a pretty short leash when people are new. Okay. We need to remove this false idea that they're expected to produce ministerial fruit right away. And, you know, that's very counter to how traditional churches are run. You know, we love these new people because they're so excited and energetic, and we can get them to do all this work that we don't want to do, but they're generally foolish. And let me explain what I mean foolish. Not foolish meaning stupid, but foolish, lacking the appropriate amount of wisdom for what they're trying to do. And the Old Testament definition of a fool is somebody who doesn't understand their place. Okay. And we all have a place based on who we are, what we know, what we don't know, our maturity level, all that. Fool does not know his place. Fool doesn't know that he doesn't know so much that he really should keep his mouth shut. And I'm using he, isn't that funny? Okay. There are no ties here. I'm being gender neutral. It's yeah, he, she, whatever. The place of a new student isn't to try and go out and teach the world. And that causes so many problems with people, you know, coming out of mainstream churches in the out of church movement into a more awareness of Torah, is that these people think that they've got to start preaching right away so they can save people. But then they say, well, it's not for salvation. But then why are you so zealous to force it on everybody? Anyway, that's it.
That's it. That's it. I think if she didn't hit you, then okay, Zadik, whatever. Well, I don't know. I first want to say, I will say thank you. Thank you for just being honest and real. If in some way you're offended, I want to say that all of us have been in one of these corners. And so we're nothing you probably haven't heard me say, or you haven't heard me say probably at any given time. It's just that we know that whatever pick one of the things we talked about tonight, or one of the things that Tyler brought up. I'm sure you fit in one of those. I have fit in several categories. So this is a safe place. Of course, in a group of mixed company, we're going to be lovingly tell these people like, oh, okay, well, you know, that's how you believe. Okay. But, you know, we're not going to call them idiots. We're not going to say those things. In this company, I have been the fool. I have been the one who that's why now I wrote in here, I say, my understanding today is this, but it may change tomorrow, because I know that there's a lot of false things that I have taught over the years that now I have to come back and be like, oh, I can't believe I said that. Father, please put weed killer on those words that they don't sprout. And if they did, kill them. And I wrote other notes, like some things. We have to know the difference between cultural and pagan. I think that's the giant takeaway here. We just have to know the difference from that, because there's a cultural way that when you, I think, what did I wrote my note that it honors the divine. There's some cultural things I've grown up doing, and I'm going to tell you, there have been some Easter cantatas that I have been part of, that I sang my little heart out and tears pouring down my face because I felt like I was in the presence of the Holy One. And I know that he was there, and I know that people had real experiences. And many of you know this, this is not a place where we're pagan police. That's the reason I asked Tyler to come in, because it is so important here that we love. I had a meeting today with a young woman who is, she's a pastor of her and her husband are pastors at a church. And I met her today for lunch, and it was so beautiful to say, hey, I just want you to know, when you come into the portion, there's going to be ladies who are from one extreme to the other, but I want you to know that you are loved. And if at any time you feel anything different, you need to come to one of us and say, because that's not the heart of the leadership of our ministry, is that we love you wherever you're coming in from. We're honoring you wherever you're coming in from, and truly wanting to disciple you, not in these ritualistic things, but we actually want to disciple you in the love of our Father, and let you so fall in love with the word that you want to seek his truth out on your own. And everything has to be tested. Everything has to be tested. Every word has to be tested. I mean, I'm wrestling with every little thing. I was sharing with her that I wrote down everything that I thought that I knew was true, including Jesus is the Son of God, like in a notebook, and went through and said, do I believe this, and why? Because someone told me, or because do I truly believe it? Because this is what the word says. And and then we talked about names tonight. Y'all know my story on this already. My grandchildren call me Yaya. I will come running over hot coals, fire, and bullets flying with loaded glass spraying at me. They do not have to call me my name. That is not my name. My name is not Yaya, but I'm coming running. It does not matter what they call me. When they yell for me and they're in trouble, and I'm going to tell you, he's been Jesus to me since I was a little girl. When I'm in trouble, I don't say Yeshua. When I'm in trouble, I call out to Jesus. And some people have a hard time with that, but that's who he is to me. That's my intimate relationship with him. That's who he is to me. And so I will vacillate for the sake of honoring everyone where you're at. But I just want you guys to know, and Tyler, yay, we have to stand up for this and not try to fit this mold because this is what everyone else is saying. We have to stand up and say, wait a minute, we're not going to talk about the church like it's the ex-husband, because it was beautiful and it's seeded some great things into me, causing me to memorize things that I would not have memorized if I was just in this movement, because we don't really push women or people to memorize like we did in church. It was a big deal. We memorized. So now I get to make these beautiful connections. We get to learn to be community this way. And I just pray that all of you heard this well. I'm sure she stirred some things up. I hope it made you question some things, is what I hope. I mean, Tyler, I hope that you shook some ladies up here tonight, and some men listening in, maybe you shook them up to say, wait a minute, if I get invited over to Christmas, does that mean I can go? Wait a minute, I have not gone, and I have been the weirdo. And did it cause anyone to fall on their knees and accept the love of the Father, or jump into the word and want it more? Or did it turn me into a crazy person and make them think I was crazy? Yeah, more pick B, because that's pretty much what normally it is. But have I said, I'm sorry, I can't do this because it's my Sabbath and I have a date with my dad, I can't go, and they see the joy and the love on my face, and I'm not doing it because it's this ritual I have to do, but because it's my heart and my love? Or come to my home for Shabbat dinner, they get to see the beauty of that, or come to a feast or a festival gathering and they see the beauty of that, as opposed to pointing out. And I have to say, thank you, Gail. Thank you, Brenda's on here. 2 women that are on this call that have been instrumental in my life to say, not to be the police, to let me walk through my journey. I was the woman who had the Hanukkah next to the Christmas tree, and Brenda, everyone loved me where I was, and I do still go to some of my family's house on Christmas, and I'm not going to I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. I still will show up and sit and love everyone through it. I don't have it in my home, but I do go and visit, and I love on all of them because that's what we get to do.
Mhm.
Do I have questions? I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to keep recording so you can answer some questions. I know, Mary Kate, are you still here? I know you had this, Mary Catherine, I know you have a question.
Yeah, I was typing them in the chat.
Go.
I'm like, wait, sorry, my 2-year-old's looked at me and said he was starving. So we're having a very late night here. But I asked him the thing. I'm like, I really need to know, like, is there really nothing wrong with Christmas? Like, is it okay? Like, I feel so immature.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a hard question. The thing I'm going to tell you, I don't know. I will tell you it's not Babylonian. I will tell you it's not from Tammuz worship. I will tell you it's not from Saturnalia. And it's not talked about in Jeremiah 10, because really the only tree symbolism you will see in the ancient world was tree of life symbolism. And unfortunately, a lot of ministries took legitimate archaeological stuff and they colorized it and made it look like taking presents to a Christmas tree, when it was really priests taking boxes to harvest fruit off the tree of life, which you can see in other panels. And I've actually seen them up close at the Museum of St. Louis, which if you ever get a chance to go, oh my gosh, it's just blow your mind. So the thing is, there's never been anything more than accusations and assumptions about Christmas being pagan. Now, there are some things that are really hinky about some countries' stuff, like what the stuff with those little
the Druids.
Well, we don't know anything about the Druids. We know very little. We only know like one or two things that the Romans wrote. No, I was talking about, like, in Scandinavia, they have these little creepy things that'll tear you apart if
Someone said Krampus.
Yes, there we go. We don't do that, thank goodness. But I don't like the whole Santa Claus thing personally. I think it involves lying to children, and my boys weren't raised with Santa Claus, because I thought, well, if I tell them that Santa Claus is real, and there are two problems. One, he gives presents to good children and not to bad children, but everyone knows that those stinking rich brats get loaded up with presents, okay? And then the poor children don't. And so we're teaching them a system of oppression where
I like that thought. That's how I was with my daughter. I said I sat her down at 6, and that's when I had my I guess my moment of conversion. We at the time was pastoring a church of God, and I just saw that Passover and Easter were like 4 weeks apart, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And as I started to look into it, then I had sat her down. I said, I have to tell you, I've been lying to you, and I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I've been lying. And I was like, there's no Easter bunny. There's no Christmas. There's no Santa Claus. There's no tooth fairy. I was going through this because I realized I was telling a lie to cover a lie, and then covering a lie. And then I'm telling her, you're not supposed to lie. And I realized how horrible. So when I did that, she started crying. Many of you know this story, crying. And she says, Mom, why are you crying? What's happening? And I said, Shelby, why are you crying? And she said, well, I thought you never bought me any presents. I thought only Santa brought me presents. And I didn't know it was you. So her whole thing was all this, she was 6. So all these years she could remember, she thought I only bought her pajamas. And only Santa bought her the presents. She didn't know I was the one spending all the money and buying. So I was like, at least I get credit for it now. I get credit for the presents. So,
yeah.
What we're saying, everyone, is we're not saying, is it bad? We don't know. It's really between you and the Father. You need to that has to be such a personal. And I'm just going to say, do not condemn someone else in their journey through this. Yeah. When they're struggling with all the things, don't condemn them. I saw someone say that they would visit with their families unless it's Shabbat. Well, hey, maybe it's like a Shabbat dinner with your family. It's okay if they just you don't know what's permissible to some and what's not permissible to others. You just don't know what's permissible. And that's biblical. I don't know what's permissible. So
I know personally for me, God has different standards for me than he has for my husband and sons. Okay. He does. He holds me to different level of accountability. I don't hold them to my level of accountability. I don't. But personally, I do not celebrate Christmas because the commercialism is offensive to me.
Same.
But
the Hallmark holidays.
If somebody invited me over for dinner, I'd go. I'd go. And I mean, if they're wanting to celebrate the birth of our Lord, since we don't really know when that happened anyway, there are a lot of different theories, but we don't know for sure. I think we err on the side of love and a positive witness for loving God. And oftentimes loving God looks different to different people based on their background and their culture. And so when we refuse to do things, sometimes it can really look like we don't love God. And that's not the impression we want to give. And I think, frankly, I remember in 2015 when I first started coming out with some of my research on the paganism, and people were just astounded. They really thought Ishtar was behind Easter. They really believed the story about the eggs dipped in blood and killing the babies 9 months later, and all that stuff. And I started coming out with the research about what we do know about Ishtar, what we do know about the first century, and that all this stuff was untrue. And people were scared to share it because the bullies on social media no one was opposing them at that time because they didn't have the tools. But I wrote these papers, they're, footnoted heavily. I gave people they could do the research, and now, actually you can confront this and say it's not true. So it's not like everyone doesn't believe it anymore, but at least there's the conversation happening now.
We love that. And I know one of our core values is that we have to have the fragrance of Yeshua. Like we have to have the fragrance of Messiah. And if our verbiage, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So it's okay to ask a question like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. I don't understand this, or I've always believed this. Can you help me understand this? That's one thing. But if you're like, we know if you're get your head bobbing, but if you're doing it typing, you could hear it. You can hear it in your words when it was going on. So it's not like that in this group. This is our discipleship group. So this group is different because everyone's really like, we have some healthy things, but they're calling it sharpening iron, but that's because they're getting the knife in your back, not because they're literally trying to help you to be a better person. They're just trying to find a way to stab you in your back. It's just
I know a guy, he called himself the scalpel of the Lord.
Oh,
he
Lord
says,
Jesus.
when I talk to you, it's gonna hurt. But
well,
it's
my
the
favorite
Lord
saying,
doing it.
my favorite saying tonight, you said, and I was like, if you're not willing to climb up on the cross, then don't be willing to throw over their tables. And I even put don't throw them under a bus. Like if you can't climb up on a cross for them, then you can't throw them under a bus either. So
that's what a lot of this is. It's pride and self-righteousness. And for us, we were like, in our minds, as far as like the Christmas and Easter and all that, thankfully we didn't even have kids, or we weren't even married yet when my husband and I began this walk. And it was like, well, we were the same way. I questioned if God was even real when my parents told me Santa Claus wasn't real. Like I was like, then God's not real. It was terrible. So at that point in my life, when I was like 12, I literally believed in Santa till I was 12. I know it's embarrassing, but I was like, I will not do that to my kids. However, I think some of us, and we can't be like too harsh either on the other people as well, because I think some people genuinely are so in love with the Lord that they're like, I will literally I will burn my kids' toys if that is what is offensive to you, God. I will quit doing Christmas if that's what is offensive to you. I'll look like a weirdo and wear something I wouldn't normally wear. We'll be freaks for Jesus, right? Like there are people who genuinely have that. And then there's also the side of like pride, but I did want to go back to this Christmas topic a little bit. I'm just curious because one of the things I saw heavily on social media this year was a bunch of like Wiccan memes, and they're like Christian, like they're like making fun of Christians, and they're over there thinking they're
Saying
celebrating.
thanks for celebrating this for us. Yeah, a
Yeah, and
lot
they're
of
like,
those.
this is our holiday. Like Christians are trying to hijack our,
Yeah,
holidays.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I want to hear, like, I'm like, what say you? Like,
So I actually, on my blog, theancientbridge.com, I have a category called challenging the memes. And I think it's the first one in there. It's our Easter and Christmas pagan, and it's a collection of articles. And I've got some research in there from neo-pagans who have actually done the research. And they're saying, no, none of this is ours. None of it. What you get, it's like, I don't know how much you know about the Masons. But the Masons are like the neo-pagans and the Wiccans and everything, in that they like to claim deeper roots than they have a right to. Everyone wants is I got a good example. The rabbis claim that the oral Torah goes all the way back to Mount Sinai. Okay. They can't prove it, but see, the farther back you can push your own religion, the more legitimate it is. But the truth is that modern day Wicca and neo-paganism and all that, it really came about in the 18th century and was based on the Romantic literature of the time and what they thought pagan life would have been like. So really, I mean, they're taking fairy tales and Romantic literature, and they based a lifestyle on it. These guys, I mean, I look at what they do, and they're not studying ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon and Greco-Roman paganism. They don't know the first thing about actual pagan, and this is a modern lifestyle. It's a modern lifestyle. And so I've got those articles in there from neo-pagans who actually did their homework because they wanted to know the roots of their religion. And they went, oh, well, that kind of ended pretty quick, because the roots weren't deep. So yeah, they do that. But I always laugh when there are people who they won't listen to anything that Protestants or Catholics have to say, but they will listen to pagans.
I think when I don't want to interrupt, but I think one thing we have to stay on top of is that it's so we all want to draw attention, like you said, people wanting to get into the newest thing. It's so noble to go into battle against the paganism, but it's not near as noble to just be set apart from this culture right here today. That's why I don't celebrate Christmas, because it sets me apart from the culture that I grew up in and the culture that surrounds me every single day. And, do I believe there's some pagan roots to some things? My husband and I debate that all the time. But what really makes a difference is how willing are you to be set apart from this culture right now? Just my 2 cents worth.
Oh, that's why I don't do Christmas. It's the commercialism. It's become so, you got to buy things for everyone, and people go into debt, and
stress and crazy.
Yeah,
hey, Keisha,
I
you're on.
agree with
Keisha,
Ginger.
do you have any input? We got Keisha Gallagher in the house.
Oh,
do you want to
hey,
say hi, or do you have
doing?
anything you'd like to add to this? Your 2 cents.
Oh, I just
Since we stepped on all the toes, let's go.
Hey,
well,
sweetie.
this is the hi, Tyler. How are you?
You've been talking a long time.
I know. We've got to catch up.
Yeah.
I actually, this past Shabbat, because we did the new moon with our Shabbat this week, and just thinking about Purim and all these things, and just the social media memes start really like in this Lent season, and they get worse as it gets up to Easter, and it's just such a stink, not that fragrance of Messiah you were talking about, Charlie. And so I was encouraging them. It's our mandate, commandment. If we want a commandment from Yeshua, it is to give good news. I don't understand why we can't just focus there. But I guess it's like a car accident. You know, everybody wants to stop and bottleneck and just look at the massacre on the side of the road rather than inviting people. And instead, we focus on inciting. And that is all from that old man nature that should be dead and in the ground. And so I'm right there with you, Tyler, encouraging all of us to be a light. And a light gives, it doesn't take. And it certainly doesn't beat people up.
It's so easy to be critical and nitpicky, and it allows us to exalt ourselves over other people. It's like, well, I know this stuff that you don't, and so my observance is purer than yours. I'm holier than you are. I'm the remnant and you're the rebellious outsiders beyond the wall. You know, you'll be out there with the dogs and the liars and
But the truth is, if we really wanted to get into the Torah, especially the moral aspect of it, if you compare yourself to that, you should feel like a cockroach that needs to run under the refrigerator, not like someone that needs to stand on a rock and, you know, berate the masses. And I think eventually, because I see people change. I've said and done a lot of the stuff that I tell people, don't do that. I did it. And I can tell you the fruit stunk. It was rotten. It did not bring people to the Messiah. It certainly didn't open the door for them to celebrate the Moedim. And if I could go back, I wish that I had had a mentor back in those days that would have told me, no. That's not the way. That's not how you do that. So I try to do that now, because I would say in my early days, I was more like that Torah terrorist. And I'm ashamed of that. I don't want anyone to have to deal with that. But I think we're seeing more people now, because they do hear voices that are telling them, no, I did that and it did not produce the fruit that you're thinking it's going to produce. So I think even in a less mature stage, even of our walk, they're learning, yeah, okay, that's not good.
That's so good. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just have to, this is what a great opportunity for us to show his love and respect the divine spark in every person. I mean, I've heard the people talking about it, but you know, they celebrate Christmas. It's like, okay. Like didn't see that in that list we were talking about in Galatians 5. I think that might be dissension and a faction. I'm not sure, but okay. But it's a blessing. Thank you. Oh, we have one more. Danielle, you have a question?
I just had a really quick comment about something that I've noticed on my walk, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So early on in my walk, the verse in Leviticus 19 that talks about firmly rebuking your neighbor, and it talks about loving your neighbor in the same verses. And I saw people use that as an excuse to rebuke, like come down really hard and really truly criticize people. So I started researching and I'm writing a blog on it now. But what I looked at is in the English version, it says, according to Oxford Languages, the origin of rebuke is Middle English, originally in the sense to force back or repress, from the Anglo-Norman French and Old Northern French rebuker, to cut down wood. Like, that was amazing to me. Like, when we're cutting down our brothers and sisters, that is what this English version of rebuking is. But I had a chat with Brenda about the Hebrew letters and what picture that paints. And like, really, it's a picture of holding out our hand, the yod, holding out our hand, that judgment of Adonai, but it's covered in grace. And we bring that hand, we open that and extend that to our brothers and sisters who don't know. We bring them under the chuppah to where they can learn the ketubah. They learn what it is to walk out this, and not in judgment, not in pushing them down and making them feel stupid and belittling them, but it's encouraging them, saying like, you've done this, but guess what? There's forgiveness, there is grace, and he loves you so much, and you can change, and it's okay. You did it in ignorance, and there is forgiveness in there. You just do your best not to do it again. So yeah, it's crazy. Like, it really is crazy how one little word gives people the power to treat people however they feel they can treat them. And when we truly don't do our best to study and learn, like, we can be so wrong when we think that we're spot on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, they're saying rebuke your neighbor. That means relationship.
Absolutely. And we think about, we have the unintentional and intentional sin. I remember learning this, and it was a big blow up. I was sharing this with this lady today at the lunch, and I said, we have the whole purpose when if Tyler, I found out you're doing something that's sinful, I come to you and I share with you, and you're like, nope, I'm still doing it. And then I say, okay, Mary Catherine, come with me. We have to help Tyler. She's like, she's going to be lost in community. We have to get to her. So we come to you and we say, no, please don't do this. And you'll find out the motivation is because then we bring you to the community and you're like, nope, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm the boss of me. And then guess what happens? Mary Catherine and I have to be the ones that throw the first stones at you if it's a stoning offense. So what happens, our motivation when we come to you isn't to go, you're sinning, you're going to die. Our motivation is coming to you in so much love, going, don't make me throw a rock at your head. Come on, I don't want to lose you as my friend. You're going to die. The motivation is different. So when we see Yeshua, and he's before the woman who's caught in the act, when he looks at everyone and said, okay, he's not saying who's without sin. He's saying, okay, who are the two that went to her? Go ahead, throw the stones. That's the law. Throw the stones. And they're like, well, I didn't go to her. Did you go to her? I didn't go. Did you? We didn't go together. So they're all dropping the rocks because no one had a right to throw the rock at her head. So the motivation is keeping you in community. The motivation is love. The motivation is not pointing you out. And again, you're not supposed to be telling someone they're unclean. We're supposed to self-examine and say, I'm unclean. And then you go to the priest. That was what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, I have a policy in general, and when I get really angry, I don't stick to my policy. But, I try not to rebuke anyone who I don't have a relationship that I cherish. Because if I do not cherish a person, I am more likely to rebuke them or just to confront them in some pretty bad ways. But if it's somebody I love, I will treat that, I will go to them very differently. Very differently.
Very good. That's good. And I mean, we push here. You'll never hear me say I'm Torah observant. I'll tell you, I'm a Torah pursuant because I'm pursuing it. I'm trying to do my best. I'm pursuing every ounce that I can get out of it that I can know how to do until he comes or I go there. But I'm pursuing. Melissa, you have your hand up and you're unmuted. Go.
I don't know how to use my phone properly. Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was just told, like, don't celebrate Purim because it's just like Halloween, pretty much, like the Jewish version. I don't know if Tyler Don's like heard that going around or if that's just in my crazy world.
Yeah, no, I've actually I've done a broadcast about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the whole thing with Hanukkah and Purim, and Thanksgiving for that matter, okay? Or I would even say birthdays or things. We want to celebrate the things God has done for us. All right, it honors him. Purim is the celebration of a great salvation, really. Hanukkah as well. I don't understand. I've never understood this whole idea where We are only allowed to, and I mean, no one's making any high Sabbaths on Purim or on Hanukkah. No one is making them into feasts. No one is making them no one's making them requirements. This is, you know what? A great thing happened here, both times. So let's celebrate. Let's remember what God did. Let's remember that the temple was cleansed. Let's remember that the Jewish people were saved. Or as the Jews say, we survived, let's eat,
I love
But
that. It's like your
yeah.
kids. Can you imagine if your sons, I mean, our ultimate father gave us these hearts as parents. So imagine, Tyler, as a parent, your sons coming to you and they make the surprise party for you because they want to celebrate the fact that one day you helped them with their soccer team and you made the day because the other mom forgot the snacks. And so from now on, May 6th is the day they celebrate you because you made their day in their soccer and and they celebrate you every year. Are you going to be screaming at them and you're going to be like, that's so pagan? You
No,
can't. So
it's not my birthday. You're
this
not
is not my
allowed to do
birthday.
it.
I did not ordain this date. I did not tell you this is the calendar date. This is
You're
wrong.
you're disrespecting me by celebrating things that I've done
Exactly.
for
It's
you.
no different when I share with you guys my princess toast. When my daughter used to on my birthday, bring me princess toast or whatever in the morning, and it was you couldn't even. It's inedible. It was like toast with crazy. I didn't go throw it back at her and say, you know what I like to eat in the morning. I can't believe you brought this to me. Same thing goes with our festivals. We do it as we learn him and as we grow and we mature. We learn what his heart is. The more we know him, we see through the glass a little bit less darkly and we get better and better at it. No different than our children. Just remember, what would I do as a parent if my child did this? And I think that's a really safe filter. You wouldn't kick them out of the house and say, nope, wrong day. You called me the wrong name. Nope, you're on the wrong calendar. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Now,
Yeah.
like God's too legal. If God was as legalistic
Oh, we'd be dead.
as people say he is, yeah, I wouldn't have made it. Oh my gosh. It's like they wouldn't have either. He is so patient. A lot of times people say, oh, they pull out every severe thing in the Bible. Oh, well, that guy who was picking up sticks, he got stoned to death, because there was no forgiveness. And I'm going, yeah, but how many other things do we see in scripture where people did stuff that was abhorrent?
Right.
And nothing happened. We don't know the whole story there.
And we forget he forgives to 1,000 generations, and all we think is he visits the sins of the father on 7, and we forget that he loves to 1,000. Like we focus on those little things.
And how long was Israel and then Judah apostate? Hundreds of years before they go into exile. Hundreds of years while he's patiently pleading with them and waiting, and they're even killing his prophets, and he's still patient.
Good. Yeah, it's a good analogy. Hey, Miss Gail, do you have any final words you want to give any wisdom before we hang up today? After we've beat everything up. Good. Gail says that, go say it out loud.
No, but I want to I want to just say what I last typed. I said I think that this talk tonight needs to be required listening for new cafe members. I feel like it needs to be required listening for everybody who, 3 years and younger in the movement. And I want to say, Tyler, thank you so much for doing this. I am absolutely thrilled that you took the time to do this and you care enough about the movement, you care enough about us that you would put yourself, I don't know, on the line maybe. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, you're most welcome. It's a pleasure. And you know me, I'm always putting myself on the line and making people angry, but I don't care.
That's true.
I'm not smart enough to be.
My internet is bad, so I had my face off during all that. But
I always say things before I even think about them. It's like afterwards, it's like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't a good idea.
Well, we've been blessed, and
Yeah.
I pray that you listening to this now or in the replay, feel free to leave comments when you'll see when everyone watching the replay, leave comments underneath the video, and so that we can we'll forward them to Tyler and Larry answer them. But feel free. We want to stir you up. We want you to understand, and we talk about apologetics. We want you to understand, why do you believe what you believe? Is it because someone told you? And that's just not in a Christian church. That's now in this movement, or what? Why do you believe what you believe? Is it, and it's including, don't listen to everything we've all told you. Learn it yourself. Wrestle with why you believe something. Get in there and study. Study to show yourself approved. I'll sound official. Study to show yourself approved. Know why you know what you know. And guess what? It's going to change tomorrow. And it's really fun that when you sit back and listen to people, and you're like, oh wow, because the more I know, Tyler, I don't know about you, but the more I realize I don't know. I mean, really. And we can't be friends, y'all, if you tell me you know everything. All my friends, they say the same thing. Oh my gosh, I know less today than I knew today. The more I study, the less I realize I know. Now I feel even more dumb. I need to know so much. So,
well, and I mean, I don't demand people agree with me on everything. Goodness sakes, I don't agree with some of the stuff that I believed last year. And that was only 2 months.
This is what I believe today. Could change tomorrow. As I told someone, I could be Catholic tomorrow. I don't even know. We don't know.
People say, well, I read this in your book and I don't agree with it. I said, well, there's a good chance I don't agree with it anymore either. So tell me what it is and we can find out.
Well, thank you for doing the work. Like Gail said, thank you for encouraging us to be brave, right? Being brave to not go with the flow, because everyone and jump in and not let people beat up on someone and jump in. It's okay to say, go love your family and love them at Christmas. If they're trying to honor the Messiah, go love them. You don't have to put it up in your home. Love your husband if that's what's happening in your home. Don't let it break up your marriage. Let him be won over by your meek and quiet spirit. Well, I don't know if that'll work for me,
and
but
don't burn your children's toys.
and I think we lost someone because she did that. I know. And so I think we lost her, but that just it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not, we have to know that if something's that extreme, what would you do for your children? And just let that be your guide. And we're excited. Thank you again, Tyler. Thank you everyone who showed up tonight, everyone listening. Ask your questions. I hope you're riled up. I pray that you continue pursuing the things of the Lord. Thank you all for being loving in this community and helping us have a community like no one else has. We have a community where we actually do love each other where we're at and honor each other's journeys. So thank you all for that. And thanks. Let you go now. Signing off. Good night, y'all.